From what I know, there's going to be a pretty big overhaul update coming soon, so I thought I would just talk about the killers and survivors before that overhaul update, just so that way we can gauge a difference between the two to see how different the killers and survivors are in this update and how they aren't. The killers are pretty good, I would say. They're all very strong in the way they worked. I would say they're all in their own rights good, I guess. I mean, this game is still survivor-sided in my eyes, but with the hitbox latencies and the hitboxes being client-sided, I love getting hit from across the freaking map by a killer that has bad ping. That's so great. Well, let's get into the killers now. Each killer has their own form of aura reading, so let's get into 1X. 1X's aura reading is his Intimidate. It slows him down a bit when he uses this, which is why. I don't know why it does that. It doesn't do that for most of the other killers, but I guess. He has his grab ability, which works the same as his M1, except instead of, immediately slashing them, he instead grabs them, and then he's about to stab his sword into them, but the survivor that he grabbed is then thrown into a minigame. If they don't mash the button that they are intended to mash, then 1X will stab them and immediately down them, which is pretty nutty. That's really good for taking out people's first lives, especially survivors that are super annoying, like Brick Battler, Shaletsky, or Builderman. If somebody knows how to do the minigame, it's kind of gonna mess you up. I would recommend that if you miss your M1 the first time and then the player jumps, it's better to then immediately try and grab after, because if you can't hit your M1s consistently, then you're probably not going to do that well as a 1X, because again, his grab is the same as his M1, so yeah. Don't get juked. He's a decent A. Being able to put a survivor instantly down is pretty good. So yeah, he's an A tier. Cool Kid is extremely basic. He has his heat sense, which is his form of aura reading, and then he has his patience meter, which his patience meter mostly fills up from getting kills. Usually if you get around 2 kills, that's when your patience meter will be completely full. And once that happens, you'll then enter this little state of yours where you'll crash the game. Sort of. You'll basically just stop the timer entirely, and your damage will increase drastically. I think you'll do about 50 damage, so you can 2-shot any survivor. It's pretty nutty. But in this state, you can't use your heat sense, so you manually have to find the survivors on your own. It's basically like hide and seek, so if you don't know the maps that well, you're kind of gonna get messed up. But he's pretty fast, like pretty freaking fast. I think he's one of the fastest killers in the game. So yeah, pretty scary if you don't know how to, juke efficiently. If you're good at hiding, then you'll probably be fine. And if you don't know the maps as the Cool Kid, then you're gonna suck. The states last for about 115 seconds, basically almost 2 minutes. So yeah, that's pretty crazy that the timer is stopped for that long. Cool Kids can drag out the game for so long. But if they don't get any kills, they can't proc their patience, which kind of messes them up. So if the Cool Kid sucks, then, it'll be fine. It's a good killer to play as if you're new to the game though, but I would say he's a pretty decent B tier, mostly because of the fact that his patience can be countered just by hiding. Guess 666 is pretty fun. He has his rush ability, which allows him to charge forward, and if he collides with a wall or any obstacle, he will be stunned for 3 seconds. He'll knock back out of the wall, and it hurts his head. Oh man, poor guy. He has his laugh, which is his aura reading. It's lame, I guess. It's a corny laugh, but whatever. His rush is pretty good though, very good for making distance. That's usually what you want to use it for. It's very important that you know the map layout, so that way you know where to rush, because the rush sends you pretty fast and far. So, it's pretty good for sniping people across the map. Very, very funny. Kind of annoying in maps with a lot of walls and stuff. Especially when you have those little tiny slopes of terrain that you can just end up hitting on accident. It is so annoying. But he has pretty good, crowd control. So I would say he's a pretty decent A tier. Jonathan Doe, the killer with the most abilities. He has his Will of Revenge, which is his aura reading. He has his Ground Slam, which is mostly good for crowd control. It's very better to use this ability if the player has already jumped, the survivor you're chasing has already jumped at least, so that way you can mess them up. It doesn't do that much damage, but it's still damage at the end of the day. It's good for, I guess finishing people too, if they're pretty low. But it's mostly better to use this in an area where there's a lot of survivors in, His rage state, which happens to be unlocked after like a minute or so, like a minute and a half, this drastically increases his damage and increases his speed, which is pretty scary. But if you're good at juking or you're just far away from him, then I mean, you're fine. It doesn't last a long time. It's mostly just for trying to execute as many players as you possibly can. It's better to go after the players that are more healthy when you're in this rage state, not to go after the ones that are low. But if the ones that are low are near you, then you might as well try and get those kills if you can. But it's better to go after people who are more healthy, as the rage state does not last that long, so take advantage of it whilst you can. And it also has a pretty annoying amount of end lag in the beginning, which is super annoying. It's whatever. I mean, John Doe's fine at most. His abilities are kinda okay. I think his ground slam is the easiest ability to counter. Literally all you have to do is just be on a slope of terrain that's higher than his ground slam. It's that easy, which is sad. But I think he's a pretty mid B, in my opinion. Draco Bloxer, another character with the most abilities in the game, just like John Doe. He has the lowest amount of M1 damage, but instead of how most killers are, he won't slow down after hitting his M1. Instead, he'll continue running because he's very fast, like really fast. He's pretty scary, but even though he does low damage, does not mean he can't hurt, like a lot. He has his roar ability, which basically just blinds all the survivors in the map. Pretty good for making them run into walls and stuff like that. Super funny. And then he has his howl ability, which allows him to just aura read. That's his aura reading. And then he has his ravage, which basically just launches him forward a bit. And if he grabs onto a survivor, which you usually always will because of the hitboxes of this game, if you grab onto a survivor, they'll start munching on them, and then they'll have bleed. If they get ravaged into a wall, it'll do even more damage and more bleed, which is pretty nutty. I think he's pretty good if you know how to counter people's jukes. If you can counter people's jukes efficiently, then you're gonna do very well with Draco Bloxer. But yeah, I think he's good. He's a decent A tier. The only reason why none of these characters are ever gonna be S tier is because of how survivor-sided this game is. Because even if you're the best player in the world, just a couple of competent survivors are enough to wipe you. It is just like, it's just sad. You don't really get that much time back when you kill survivors either, which kind of sucks. But I guess it's understandable considering that games can last a pretty long time, especially with Cool Kid. So yeah, I understand that. But yeah, that's all the killers. And let me know who you main in the comments or something. I main 1X because he's cool. I like grabbing people and stabbing them. And yeah, thanks for watching. Bye bye.